And
It's the company, they're giving me them free, and so they're questioning whether I had to present my notebook and everything.
oh, well, she did pay for that. There's a lot of the stuff they pay for.
It's raining today. It's the first time it's been raining for a long time. And the farmers have been waiting for it. The grass is pretty dry. I'm at the edge of town. That's the sign of Crystal, population 222, which is not completely accurate. I think that there are a lot less than 222 living in Crystal at the moment. We're on West 66th, going through the northeast corner of North Dakota. And this is the town of Crystal, North Dakota. This is from the east side of town, the edge of town looking down Main Street. There are the train tracks in the middle, and in the distance is the bridge that crosses the creek that runs through town, Cart Creek. This is City Hall of Crystal. It's around the corner from my grandmother's house.
Are you going to ask me questions?
Yes. Okay. What's your name?
My name is Grace Sailor O'Toole.
And where were you born?
I was born in Leyden,
Leyden, North
North
Dakota.
Dakota.
And where is that from here? How far is that?
That's about, I'd say 35 miles north. Northeast.
Is that pretty close to
Northwest.
Canada? Is that?
Well, it's getting close to Walhalla, and Walhalla is only about 5 miles from Canada.
So I guess
And I went to school in Walhalla, high school.
high school. Where'd you go to grade school?
Country school by Leyden. We walked about 3/4 of a mile to country school for 7 years. I only went to country school 7 years.
How many people were in your class?
Oh, in the room, I suppose there was 15.
And then the teacher just figured out who was taught what? And
I started out as first grader, and there were no second graders. So when I went to the next grade, I jumped into the third grade because there was third grade kids. That's why I got 1 year ahead of myself, because that's the way they had to do it in the country school. They had to teach group teaching.
Mhm.
And then I went to Walhalla High School.
And then you lived in Leyden all that time? You would come back in the summers?
We had to drive back and forth. And in the wintertime, we had to stay up there. Because the roads were impassable.
Guess so.
And I can remember going on a sleigh, a wagon with horses pulling us to get to Walhalla to school.
And you would go by yourself or your dad?
Well, it was My dad didn't have horses.
Mm-hmm.
Mr. McCurdy had horses, and he had a cutter, one of these little things that you pull with horses that people can sit in, and there's some protection. It's like a little tiny house on a sleigh. And some of them even had little heaters in, but we would sit in there. It was dangerous to have a heater or anything that would, if they tipped over, you might have a fire. So it was usually just straw and blankets. We'd sit in this little cutter and horses would pull us. And I can remember being taken to school on that would be a Sunday night or Sunday. They'd come and get us on a Friday. That was during the winter time. I was going to high school.
And what did you do after high school?
Then I went to Valley City to Teachers College for 2 years, and that was, Valley City is in North Dakota. How many miles?
Is that closer to Grand
3.
Forks?
It's closer to Fargo.
Oh,
It's down in
Okay.
Fargo.
and how long were you there?
2 years. I just got a standard certificate in teaching.
And then
I
you
had a good time. I really enjoyed my Valley City school years. And then my first year of teaching after that was a country school west of Lee. And I hated it.
Why?
Well, I think there were 26 kids,
Yeah.
and I just didn't know how to handle them. They were good kids, but I didn't know how to group. You have to maybe teach 3rd and 4th and 5th grade together. And you might have no 7th graders, but you might have an 8th grader. And then you might have 4 first graders. You might have 3. I mean, it was just you just threw them together and group taught them. And I just wasn't I was discouraged. I didn't think I was doing a good job, and I had to keep busy work. And I didn't have one of these machines that they have in the school now where they rip off, what do they call those?
Oh, Xerox?
Xerox. There was nothing like that. I had a gelatin pad that I could make a copy on and then make some more copies off of the gelatin pad. And that would keep some of the, like the first graders had to be kept busy doing something while I was trying to teach the 7th graders.
Well, how long did you stay there at that school?
1 year. And I said, I don't want any more to do with teaching. And my mother said, oh, just go someplace for the summer and you'll feel better when you come back in the fall. And I did kind of forget how bad it was. Where did I go that summer? I think I went to Chicago to visit relatives in Chicago.
Was that where Aunt Lizzie?
Aunt Lizzie and Aunt Clara and my cousins Isabel and Ethel in Virginia. And I stayed with them about 6 weeks, I suppose, and then they drove me back. We spent a little time in Layton. And then by the time fall came, I had to have money, and where did I go next? Minto, I think. Minto had a vacancy. I think it was Minto. I taught Minto first grade 1 year anyway. And that was a bad year too. There were about 35 kids. And they had to be divided so that there was about 2 groups of first graders, the slow ones and the smarter ones, and then there was about 2 groups of 2nd graders. And when you were teaching one group, you had to keep the other kids occupied doing something. In their mind span, they would be interested in the color sheet maybe for 10 seconds,
Mm-hmm.
you know. And then what do? You have to keep them busy so that you can teach reading or whatever you're trying to teach to the other group. And I wasn't really good at it. When I finished that year, I knew I wasn't going to teach school anymore. That was it.
What did you do?
Then, I think I went to Washington DC with my girlfriends from Walhalla, Phyllis Campbell and Marcella Sobey and Joyce Rindy from Hoopo. And these girls were government girls during the war. They worked as stenographers in Washington DC in the State Department. And I said, well, what could I do? And they said, oh, there's lots of jobs in Washington DC because during the war, you know, they could use people to work in offices filing or doing something. It didn't take any brains. So my mother said, sure, go. So I went. And I spent 2 years in Washington DC and I got a job working in the War Department. And it was working with codes. Very interesting work.
What did you do with the codes?
Well, it's always secret when you're dealing with codes, so I wouldn't want to talk about it, but
Oh,
it was fun. And then then the war ended when I was in Washington, D.C. And if you wanted to stay on in Washington, D.C., you would have to take a civil service test to get a job with the government.
mm-hmm.
I had seen everything I wanted to see in Washington, D.C. It was a lovely time, but I thought, I've had enough of it, I'll move on.
Yeah.
I didn't want to take a test. Didn't want to stay there the rest of my life. And my friend, Fanny Petruso, was going to Mexico City to summer school for, I think it was 6 weeks term summer school. And she wanted a friend, and she knew that I had saved some money, and she said, how about going to Mexico City with me to summer school? Well, I suppose. And I went to YWCA and took Spanish. And I went to the doctors and got all my shots that you would have to go to another country. And everything was planned. And Fanny said, Chief Grace, I'm sorry to say, but I don't have any money left. I can't go. Well, I was just left with my mouth open. And she had everything lined up, the school reservations. She had the place that we were going to live in Mexico City, rented already. Everything was set up. So I talked Myrtle, a girl in the office where I work. Myrtle, you have some money, why don't you and I go to Mexico City together? So Myrtle, she didn't know. She hadn't taken Spanish, she didn't know, but she had enough money to go. That was the main thing. So we decided to go.
And what happened there?
Well, it was, I don't even like to tell you about how we got a ride to San Antonio with a lady. But how we got this ride to San Antonio was kind of, it shows you how foolish we were. We put an ad in the paper saying we would like to share, we would help drive if anyone was going to Laredo, Texas. And we got some funny answers, and it was a stupid thing to do. But one of the answers was this doctor's wife. She saw the ad and she knew her mother wanted to get back to San Antonio because she had been visiting her. Her mother was visiting her from San Antonio, and she had her car. And she didn't want to drive back to San Antonio by herself. She must have been about 80. But she could drive, and she was bright. So she and her mother came up to view us, to see who these girls, crazy girls, were that put an ad in the paper. And we looked each other over and we thought we could do it. So I had to get my driver's license the next day or whenever. The day before we left, I had to get my driver's license.
You didn't have one, I guess?
No, I'd been in Washington for 2 years and my driver's license had expired.
Oh, okay.
And I had never driven in the city. I had a driver's license for North Dakota back roads.
Yeah. It's a little
But
different.
living, parking, what do you call
The
that?
parallel parking?
Parallel parking. I had to do that. And I really was quite sure of myself. For some reason or other, I don't know how I dared. I borrowed a car to get to the police station. Anyway,
Did you pass the test?
I passed the test. But what if I hadn't? I mean, it was the next day we were leaving.
I don't know.
I don't know what I would have done. And I guess Myrtle must have had she knew how to drive too. So anyway, we started and we went by way of the Gulf of Mexico. We got to see New Orleans and we made it quite a scenic trip down there. And this lady was just wonderful. And she says, and you can stay at my house. We get to San Antonio and I'll show you around San Antonio. We got to see the Alamo and she took us all around. And then we went to Laredo, which is just a little ways south of San Antonio. We got to Laredo and we found out something funny. We had to take a plane because the buses, which we were planning on, were, you had to have a reservation to go on a bus in Mexico. A reservation for a bus.
But not for a plane?
Because everybody rode the bus. That was the mode of transportation for the people there. And we didn't have enough money planned for a plane trip to Mexico City. And we had to dig into our purses to see if we had enough money to fly. But we did, and we flew. We got into Mexico City then. So quick, just a few hours, and there we were with everybody jabbering in Spanish, and we didn't know what they were talking about. It was just a strange country, strange people, strange language, so quick. Well, it was a guy that had been in Laredo in the hotel that we stayed in. He was a Coca-Cola salesman. And he had visited with us, and he said, when you get to Mexico City, I'll help you get a taxi. He knew a little Spanish, and he knew how to do it because he'd been going back and forth. So we relied, thank goodness for him, he got us a taxi. And when you go out and try to get a taxi, you have to bargain with him. And he would say, well, where do you want to go? Well, I'll take you there for so many pesos. No, you can't take the first offer. You have to say, no, I can't give you that many pesos. It's only worth this many pesos. Well, we didn't know that. We didn't know you have to bargain with everybody every time you do anything. Well, he got us, paid our way and got us in the taxi and shipped us off. And we go rolling down this taxi to our address. I think it was Siete Ocho, I don't know. Rosas Moreno. The Black Rose? Is that what that means? I forget. I used to know. That was our address anyway, where we were going to stay.
Yeah.
And the taxi stopped at this address. And we said, is this it? This is your place. This is your address. Well, we couldn't believe it because all it was a wall with doors on it, with a number over the door. All down the street, it was just a long wall with a number over these doors. And this was ours. That was a number, and there was our door. And I can remember Myrtle says, let's get out of here. Well, we were there. And we rang the bell at this door and just waited to see what was going to happen. And out comes this little old Mexican lady, all smiles, come in, girls. I know she was saying that, but she was speaking Spanish. But she said, you have the right. And she was just like a mother that bringing her little hens, little chickens back under her wing. And we went into this door, and inside was a big patio. And the house was built around the patio. You had to go upstairs, and there was our bedroom and someone else's bedroom. The dining room was up there. And behind the dining room was the kitchen. And it was built around this patio. And in the patio there was grill work. I have pictures. It was just another world. And
So how long were you there?
6 weeks.
And then you
We
came.
just loved it.
Did
It
you
was
learn
so
a lot
much
of
fun.
Spanish?
It went pretty good. I got so that with my dictionary, I could go any place in town. I wasn't a bit afraid to do anything with your dictionary.
Yeah.
You know, there were people that knew quite a bit of English, probably more now. And then we knew some Spanish, and we had our dictionaries, and we could figure out. We could make people understand what we wanted. And staying at that place, there were 6 other teachers staying there. They had come down from the United States, and they knew they had planned this vacation. More planning than we had put into it. And we took classes. Now, the classes we took were unique, but I can go back and thank Fanny for picking out these classes. We took rural education, which meant every Friday we visited a rural school.
Wow.
And that was an education right there. We took geology, and every Wednesday we visited an extinct volcano around the, and then 6 weeks after it couldn't have been 6 weeks. Anyway, in the middle of the term, we went to see Paricutin, an erupting volcano, about 500 miles west of Mexico City. And so we saw an erupting volcano, walked over here and there over lava that was just coming out of the ground, red hot lava. It was just, wow. Let's see, what else did we take? Rural education and geology, and then we took dancing, which I played out on right away. Because we were up in Mexico City is high, and the air is thin.
Mm-hmm.
You couldn't walk very far, but what you pant for breath because you just weren't acclimated to this kind of climate. And trying to dance, that was just impossible. Can you imagine the Mexican hat dance? You've seen them do that.
Yeah.
Imagine trying to do that up there. We couldn't hardly breathe. Well, we quit the dancing. We took art. We did some kind of painting that they had wooden plates. We had to stand in the sun and rub the paint into the wood. And then it would harden, and then you would carve out your design and put your other color in and rub it in.
Do you still have that artwork that you did?
I think I threw it out. I had it for years, but I don't think I have any sign of it anymore. I had the wooden plate that was partially done for a long time. I don't think I have it anymore. Well, let's see what other, we took Spanish, and we weren't very good in Spanish, but we didn't care because we weren't going to take the tests anyway. When the school was over, time for tests, we went shopping. We didn't care. I mean, we weren't down there to go to school. We were down there to get to see Mexico.
Yeah.
And we did that.
It
We
sounds
really
like it.
had an education. We really saw Mexico. We lived with a Mexican family and saw rural schools. Saw how the older people were trying to learn to read. They had them lined up. They were demonstrating for these university kids from the Estados Unidos. You know, they were showing us how everybody, if they didn't go to school, they had to go to jail. That's what they told them. That's what they told us. They had to go to school or go to jail. They wanted them to learn to read and write their names. And they had a big schoolyard. Everything was built around a courtyard. The houses all were built around a little patio, and the schoolyards were all built around a patio. And everything that's the way things were built. The houses were built around their yard. The house was built around their yard. Now, what was I going to tell you? I don't remember.
When that was,
Oh, the rural schools. We went to the rural schools and they lined up in their little yard in the middle of their school. The men on one side and the women on one side, and there was blackboards at their end of the room. And they were demonstrating to us. They would ask these people to go down and write their name on the blackboard, or to write something, or they were showing their skills, showing how these adults were going to school and learning how to write and how to.
wow.
That was interesting. That was one day.
Did it remind you at all of teaching the schools up here?
Well, when we visited the classrooms, it was much the same.
The one room and the,
But this adult education, that was something you never saw before.
yes, yeah.
And,
But when that
oh,
ended,
and another thing, we were such special guests, you know, university kids from the United States, that we were invited to the school board's members, the president of the school board's house for lunch, for instance. We all sat around in this little house, and we were fed something, I don't know. So their best, you know, they were putting on. We were their special guests. And there must have been, how many of us? 10, 15 in this class. And they got us into their houses and they gave us a little treat. And the president of the school board, one of the presidents, one school board president invited us. Anyway, I remember going into one private home. They have a little treat. What else? It was a lot of fun. Anyway, Mexico City was, and then of course coming home we were pretty broke. We considered going to, what is that resort on the west side of Mexico?
Cancun?
No, that's a, anyway, we counted our money. We sure wanted to go there, but we couldn't afford it. And it was all we could do to afford to take a bus home. There was no flying home. We took a bus, and I had lost a coat coming home. Left it on one of the buses, and when I realized I'd left it, they didn't know anything about it. They didn't want to either, you know.
Yeah.
It was gone. Somebody got a coat, beautiful brown coat. Well, anyway, we came all the way from Mexico City to the border on a bus, and we played out. And then we had to go all the way from the border of Texas up to the northern part of
How long?
Crystal, North Dakota. I don't know, but it was just terrible.
Oh gosh.
But then Myrna wanted to come. She was from West Virginia.
Oh.
And she came back with me she had never seen North Dakota. So she came back with me for a couple days and then she left.
I guess it was pretty different from West Virginia, the hills and the coal mines.
From North Dakota?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What did she think of it?
She didn't say.
Oh.
I don't remember. It was just part of the summer. She just came and took a bird's eye view of what North Dakota was like and then went on back to her place.
Well, in all that traveling to Chicago and DC and all that, did you ever consider not coming back to North Dakota to live?
No, I kind of thought I was just on a vacation or something. I considered North Dakota my home, and I really I wasn't out looking for another place to live. I was just looking at the country and seeing what I could see, and I was planning on going back to North Dakota. And I might tell you one of the girls in the office that I worked in, one day, what are you going to do? You're going to Mexico City? Then what? Oh, I'm going to go back to North Dakota. Oh, you're just the type to go back to North Dakota to teach school. That would be just like swearing at me. That would be the worst thing in the world she'd want anybody to do.
Yeah. But you don't. You're back here and...
Well, then I did finally go back to teaching school.
Well, what'd you think of it
I
then?
taught Walhalla for 1 year.
Was it all in one room like it was before?
Walhalla School.
Yeah, or was it?
I taught 5th grade in Walhalla, and I
Oh.
think there were 35 kids in the room. I had 4 repeats, kids that hadn't made that 5th grade before and were doing it again, 4 of them. And there were 35 kids, and the room was small, and I think it was maybe 2 feet, just enough to kind of walk sideways between the desks. Every year that I taught school, it was bad. And I got married, and I decided that's it with teaching, and I'll never teach again.
Well, so who did you marry?
I married Joe O'Toole, and I met him. His sister was teaching 1st grade in Walhalla, my sister Martha, and teachers convention was in October in Grand Forks or someplace, I don't know. So she and I went together, and we stayed overnight at their house out in Crystal, and I met Joe. And that was,
How soon after that were you married?
oh, I met him in October, and we were married in April.
Wow, that's pretty.
So that was too quick. That was just another foolish thing that I did.
Then, well, what happened after you got married? Where'd you live?
Oh, but first we lived in, where Rugden and Louie live now, just down the street.
Mm-hmm.
As soon as I got through, I got married when I was still teaching in April. I didn't get through teaching that 5th grade in Walhalla till May. So as soon as I was through teaching, Joe had bought this house. It had belonged to Mrs. Baker. And it had no running water, had an outside toilet. At that time, it was just a little house, that's all. And my mother had given me, my mother and dad, a set of bedroom furniture and a living room furniture. And because we didn't have a wedding. And she said, if you don't want a wedding, then I'll put whatever I was going to put in a wedding for you and give you furniture.
Do you still have the furniture?
No. It's over 50 years now. I think that little end table in my bedroom on the far side is a sawed off part of the vanity.
Oh, really? Well, so your parents were still in Leyden then?
Uh-huh.
They still? And then after?
Still in Leyden, and my dad died when Mary Grace was 3 months old.
And where was Mary Grace born in Rugden and Louie's house?
Mary Grace was born in Grafton. I had to go to the hospital in Grafton, but that's where we lived, was in that little house with Rugden and Louie.
How long did you live there?
Just till that spring. Joe's dad bought a farm in Bathgate. And it was a house on the farm, a nice house, but no electricity, no running water. The house wasn't finished. It was a new house, but it had never been completed. It had never been wired. It had never been plumbed. So
you went out there.
we went to the Bathgate farm, and there were 3 of us, and Mary Grace, Joe and I. And then that fall, there was no point in staying on the farm because there was no, if we'd been living in Crystal, he could have worked in the potato house but there was no work. It was just out on a farm by Bathgate.
How far away is that?
From Bathgate?
From here, yeah.
Bathgate is about 30 miles.
Did you guys have a car, or?
We had a car.
Well, what did you do in the fall then?
Well, Joe decided to go to California, and his sister Margaret lived there, and he just thought he could get a job working in a service station or something, and he did. And we went to California, and he got a job in the service station, and Joey was born out there. And then we came back in the spring with 2 kids, Mary and Joey. And we moved back to the farm in Bathgate. Let's see.
And so Papa Joe would work with in the farms?
Oh yeah, he
in the
was
spring
still
and
part
summer?
of the, he worked with his brothers on the farm.
With the O'Toole brothers?
And he would, if needed be, he would cultivate in Crystal or whatever. I mean, he was working with them. And we were living in Bathgate on the farm.
And then the next fall, did you go
The
back
next
down?
fall, what to do? I think the next fall, Grandma and Grandpa were invited to take a trip with Mary and Johnny Carl. And so they left, and Joe and I and the 2 kids and moved into their house while they were on their trip with Johnny. And they were gone most of the winter with Mary and Johnny. They went to California, they went to Mexico, they went to Florida, they just toured the United States. And we stayed, and I was a cook, such as it was. And there was Jack and Billy and Dick.
In the house?
No.
Where was the house?
Right where Dick and Keitha live now.
Oh wait, still out by
Mhm.
Brian and Sarah? Okay.
And then come spring, Joe called California and he said, "Is the job still available to work in your service station?" And so in the spring, that would be 1950, we took off to go back, bag and baggage, we were going to live in California. It just didn't seem to be working out.
Did Joe like to be a farmer, or it just was
Well,
too
I think
difficult?
he felt that there was enough people farming, with all the brothers and all. And I
How
think
many
he-
brothers were there?
Well, all but Billy were farming, were wanting to farm. Edward and Bobby, and the younger ones, Jack and Dick.
And then what about their uncles, T.E.'s? Did he have any brothers that were farming?
Yeah, his dad had a brother, Rob, and Rob had his own farm, and that was about 2 miles. What direction? West, northwest, 2 miles. Rob had sons. Jimmy was a doctor, and Lawrence and Pat and Robert were farming. They had their own setup, so that wasn't connected with the T.E. outfit at all. The T.E. was Joe's dad.
And so he just felt like there were too many people?
Well, he felt like it would be easier for him to get out of it, I guess. I don't know. And so we packed off. We had a moving truck go into Bathgate and get all our stuff out of that house. And when Grandma and Grandpa came back, with their trip with Johnny, we stayed with them until the roads were passable. It was a bad spring. That was another reason Joe was discouraged. He thought farming, it looked like we were going to get flooded out completely. It was 1950. That was the year Katie was born. She was born 2 weeks after we got to, or was it 1 week after we got to California.
Oh gosh, that's so close.
This was the 3rd child, 14 months younger than they were each spaced 14 months apart. So when we left here, it was there was washed out roads and culverts out, and it was a matter of zigzagging to get out of here. And then the bus we had a great big van bring our furniture. We didn't, the baby bed, you'd be surprised how much furniture that was necessary. We had our dishes, our pans, our bedroom set, our living room set, baby beds, everything. When we got out there, we didn't have any of our furniture. because the moving truck couldn't get into the farm to pick it up. Everything was flooded up here. So when we stayed with Margaret, Joe's sister Margaret, and Ray Stangl. We stayed with them for a while until we got a sort of a motel. Stayed in a motel for about a week. And finally we got a housing, and we got along with the housing with impromptu furniture until our furniture finally got there. Oh, I have to tell you though, my mother went back with us because I was pregnant with Katie, you know.
Yeah.
And she knew that Joe might need help. So she came along. Katie was born 1 week after I got to California.
But your mother was there to help out. And
So my mother was there to babysit. Joe got a job right away. Service station, my mother babysat the kids. And I had another one. It was a wild situation. I can't imagine. So risky.
Well, what made you guys come back here finally? I mean, if that was.
We were in California 2 years. And the war in Vietnam, or where is it, Korea.
Yeah.
The war in Korea was on, and Jack went to Korea. Billy was in the war. And Joe's dad had all this land, this Bathgate farm. And Joe says, I think maybe I could be useful on the farm now. Dad has all this land, and a couple of the boys are in the war.
Well, did he like farming
So
if he had
he
the
really-
chance?
He said to me one time, I don't know anything else. I never had a chance to go to school.
Yeah.
And when he came out of the war, he got married. He could have gone with the GI Bill. Instead of getting married, he could have gone back to school after getting out of the war. In fact, he could have gone back to school anyway. He was so inclined. But you know, like everybody else, when they get so old, they think, it's too late to go to school.
Yeah.
So he came back, and we went back to Bathgate.
Did the house
And we had 4 children then. Alice was born, was she 10 days old when we left California, I think? And coming back was really something. 3 kids in the back seat, and the baby between Joe and I in the front seat coming home.
Was your mother still with you?
Oh no, she left after Katie. After we got, she must have been there 2 weeks, and she stayed 2 weeks when Katie was born. She wasn't with us. So we came back, and little Alice was 2 weeks old. We had no air conditioning in the car coming through the desert, coming through. So I tried to nurse Alice going through the desert, and had a bottle that I couldn't have in milk. I gave her in the bottle at night. She slept all day during the day. The car kept her rocked to sleep, and at night she cried, and she had to exercise some way. And by the time I got up here, I was just about ready to. It was 24-hour duty, and I was only 10 days since I'd had a baby, and I was on duty all that time. Alice cried all night, and the kids had to be taken care of during the day, because there were 3 little kids that had to have color books given to them and books read to them, and they were out in the back seat. One of them was in diapers.
Katie.
Maybe 2, I don't know. And Alice, of course. So,
How long was that trip?
about 4 days.
And then, so you guys come back and you work on the farm.
It's just a terrible story, isn't it? Then we went back to the farm, and then that comes up, well, now what to do, because there's no potato house work in Bathgate. Same old story, and so there was a vacant house, or there was a house for sale in Crystal. Joe thought if we moved to Crystal, I can get a job in the potato house in Crystal in the wintertime.
And
And he did, and we came back and we bought the house across, you never knew that house, but it was the
across
big
the
house.
creek.
Across the creek. It was the Johnson House. They had been pharmacist in Crystal years ago. And they owned this house, and it was a big house. Wonderful house. The kids just loved it. They all had their own bedrooms, and they had a big dining room. It was really, we really expanded. We really loved it. Alice was, how old was she? When we moved in there, she was born in April. We moved in there November 18th, 1950. And then I've been at Crystal ever since.
And when was Pete born?
Pete was 3 years younger than Alice.
So how many kids do you have?
I have 5 children. And Pete's the last one.
And are any of them farmers?
No, they're not. I don't know how that happened, but Joey went to school and he's a civil engineer, and Pete went to school and he's an accountant. He has his master's in accounting. And the 3 girls are all educated.
Well, did you or Papa Joe ever try to talk him into farming or not farming?
I don't think he'd ever try to talk him into it, because he felt that farming was hard. He said one time to me, it was just like gambling. You might as well go to Las Vegas. You can have a nice crop, and the weather or a storm will come one night and wipe it all out. He wasn't really, he liked farming. That's all he ever knew how to do. But he thought there was something better to do than go out and farming. So he'd ever done all he knew to do, but
Did he ever?
didn't encourage his boys.
He never took them out to the farm, to the
He
land?
never took them out to the farm. He never sort of coached them to farm. They were out a few times, but I think probably Bobby, of course, they lived on the farm. Bobby taught Tommy. Tommy would drive a tractor or do something out there. My boys never did that. And Edward would take his boys out. They didn't take to farming though either. And then Dick lived out there on the farm. So when his kids grew up, they were part of the farm. Well, I guess just Brian. Jamie went off to do something else.
So how many?
They still have a farm out there now, but most of it is done by, Edwards are all done with it. Their kids are all doing something else. Joe, my boy, they're doing something else. Dick's, Brian is in it. Bobby's, Tommy is in it. Billy's in Grand Forks, he was a teacher. His kids did other things. Jack never married.
Is he still working sometime out in the fields with them?
Jack? Oh yeah, he still helps them. He's supposed to be retired.
Well, since Papa Joe died, do you keep up with how well the crops turn out? And because you still own some land.
I still have some land, but it's in Layden, and that's quite a distance from Crystal. And when Joe was living, I think they did my land up in Layden, but it got to be too far to go, and somebody else was working it.
What happened to Layden?
Layden?
Yeah.
It's got a rock there now. There's nothing there anymore. I still own my land that's up there. My brother had land, inherited land up there too, and his family have moved out of Layden. They're living in here and there. There's 3 girls. My brother had 6 girls. And there's Sue, well, the oldest one, Kathy, lives in the state of Washington. The next one, Margaret, lives in Grafton. Her husband's a sandblaster. Is that what they call it? Sandblasting, I think so. And Margaret, and then Tully. She had twin girls, Tully and Nancy. And Tully lives in Walhalla, and Nancy lives in Swald, which is just a little community, not too far from Layden, really. And there's, let's see, Nancy and Tully, and Susan lives in Walhalla, and Mary lives in Walhalla. So that's, Camden's kids are pretty much around here, except one, or except the oldest one. Kathy lives in Washington State.
How many people live in Crystal? Do you know that?
How many people live in Crystal? Gosh, not very many. It says on the sign at the end of town, 250 or something like that.
222, I think.
222, but I don't know if there's 222. And there's vacant houses, there's empty houses. People might come back and rent a house for a few months and move away again.
But when was the last time a new family came and settled in this area?
Oh, well. We have lots of transients come in and work in the summertime with the sugar beets or potatoes and move out again in the fall. Quite a few Mexican families come in and leave. Come in, go to school, work in the potatoes or in the beets, and then leave back to Texas. And
Do you ever think that you would have ever wanted to live anywhere else?
gosh, no, I don't think so. I was born in North Dakota, high school, educated in North Dakota, married in North Dakota, and all in this area, in this northeast corner. I don't know what it would be like to live in the western part of the state. It just seems like that's a different country altogether. North Dakota, right, this part is flat and all grain growing and potato growing. What's wrong with you?
Nothing. Just crying. Well, I think that
That
runs.
emotional stuff
Yeah.
runs in the family, doesn't it?
I think so. Well, thank you
Well-
for talking to me. I think that wraps it up.
Okay, that'll be fine. I'm ready to quit anyway.
Oh, good. The other edge of town by my Uncle Joe's house. That's Main Street that goes out of town. It's the creek that runs through the back of my grandmother's house and throughout the town. Back there is the land where the big house was that my mother's family lived.